Well, hello everyone. It's really good to visit with you all again. It's November 20th of 2022. I had a much more lengthy presentation on the First Amendment, and then I plan to follow up with one on the 14th Amendment, which is easily more important than the First Amendment, which I will get to when we have that presentation. But there's so much to it, I just hadn't had time to finish the first part. So here's an appetizer nonetheless. First of all, of course, do visit us on Facebook. We have, you can sign up on Twitter. We have a YouTube channel and, of course, our own website. Go there. It hasn't been updated a lot recently, but there's just a ton of material on there. And I frequently will post links to different articles about different things when they come up when I'm on a Facebook group or something like that. So our church, of course, is all about stripping away all the supernatural, superstitious junk from religion. And it turns out, gosh, there's a lot left after that. All kinds of things having to do with what these are the answers to. You still have the questions at why be good, how to get what you want out of life, how to have self-respect and self-esteem and so forth and so on. We're mainly about rejecting all the supernatural beliefs, of course. And we follow what is called Clifford's Credo. If you've not read W.K. Clifford's essay called The Ethics of Belief, and this is online, free, just Google search or whatever you're using, DuckDuckGo or something, search for The Ethics of Belief, and you'll find it. This is the key statement in that. It's lengthy and he gives a lot of good argument, but he said it's wrong always, everywhere, and for anyone to believe anything on insufficient evidence. This idea that, well, we're all free to believe what you want. Well, we really say, no, not really. And there's lots of circumstances where believing against insufficient evidence can really harm people. Imagine you're on a jury and you decide to believe something that's not factual just because that's what you choose to believe. No, sorry, not acceptable. So if you look at it that way, really, we say you should just not believe anything more than you really need to. And it turns out there's not really a whole lot you need to believe. Thomas Jefferson said, ignorance is preferable to error. You're a lot further away from the truth if you believe nothing than if you believe what's wrong. Not only that, but if you believe what's wrong, it keeps you from asking the questions that maybe will lead you to what is right. So we're about thinking more than belief. Most important, utterly undeniable, and consequential truth of existence. This is the prayer of a freethinker. I don't know. The more you say that, the more you're going to think, the more you're going to investigate, doubt the received wisdom, and maybe you're going to circle back and wind up settling on, yeah, this appears to be the best explanation. But there's a big difference between saying, I believe something, and saying, it looks to me like the best explanation is this. Our principles, therefore, reason, making sense of things. The best that we can do, it doesn't mean you're ever going to get at the absolute truth. We don't claim there's an absolute truth. Maybe there is an absolute truth, but I don't know of any absolute truth. We want to enjoy life. We want to pursue happiness. That's one of the life, liberty, pursuing happiness, of course, which definitely relates to the First Amendment and all of the things in the Constitution. And we want to appreciate life. We want to discover the good and finally love by exploring meaning and purpose and attaching values to things that deserve the attachment of value. Put this up front today instead of at the end so that you'll be thinking about it through the rest of the presentation, and always really that what we do is greatly assisted by your financial support. So you can visit donate at the www.churchoffreethought.org. We depend on your support, showing up and financial both. You can support your values by supporting the North Texas Church of Freethought, because together we can do what none of us can do on our own. And if you have ideas for additional things we can do, and you're willing to assume some of the time and trouble that it may take to get that going, please let us know. So, as I said, we'll have a little appetizer here on the First Amendment. And a warning, I'm not a lawyer, But the last I checked, the Constitution starts out saying, we the people, not we the lawyers. Here's the First Amendment. I think a lot of us know much of this, if not the whole thing by heart, that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, here's the interesting thing. One of the key words in this First Amendment, religion, is nowhere defined. Never been defined by the federal government. You can use all the dictionaries you want, but there's a lot of different definitions in the different dictionaries. And academics and scholars have never come to an agreed upon definition of what religion is. So that's a difficulty. And in fact, were the government to say religion is this, that would really amount to being an establishment of religion, wouldn't it? So this is a little thing that we'll be talking about when we have a longer presentation on the First Amendment. Then you have these interesting words of what the government's not supposed to do. It's not supposed to respect an establishment of religion. It's not supposed to prohibit the free exercise thereof, and it's not supposed to abridge these other things. Now, notice all those things is not supposed to abridge. They could have put this up at the beginning. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of worship and the rest of these kinds of things. But instead, they've got this no law respecting an establishment of religion. And of course, respecting could have a double meaning. Respect meaning honoring or thinking that it's a great thing, or just relating to. And I think that was really the meaning. But words mean what people think they mean. And interestingly, government is not supposed to abridge freedom of speech or the press and so forth, but it's supposed to not prohibit the free exercise of religion. So does that mean the government can abridge it without prohibiting it? That's been a problem over the years too, and when we have the longer presentation, I'll tell you about some of the things that wound up being seen as very bad in terms of the government restricting, even if not prohibiting, the free exercise of religion. And here's some more terms. Free exercise, the abridging again. What is speech, too? Speech is talking, but is it telephonic transmission? Is it the internet? And how about the press? I should have made that a different color, too. Should just mean books and the press. It should be things that they had at the time of the ratification of the First Amendment, right? It shouldn't be the internet. It shouldn't be electronic publication. What does it mean to peaceably assemble? If you get a whole crowd of people in the street shouting and blocking traffic, is that peaceably assembling? What about grievances? You can only petition the government for redress of grievances and not to maybe make things better. Not that it's really a grievance. That particular portion of the First Amendment reminds one of what kings always used to be good for in the olden days, where people would go to the king and say, hey, my neighbor did this, and you've got to do something to fix it. So that's what the idea of court came from. Here's the portion of the First Amendment that we're probably really most interested in. I don't know an atheist that probably doesn't know this by heart, or at least knows the importance of it. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. There's a key word. Congress shall make no law. This is a federalism provision. It means the federal government, Congress, which is the lawmaking body of our federal government, is not supposed to make a law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. At the time of the passage of the Constitution and the ratification of the First Amendment, for the whole Bill of Rights, in fact, 4 states had their own established church. Now, 2 of them discontinued it like the next year. 2 more, I think it was Connecticut and Massachusetts, persisted funding their established churches into the 1800s. But at the time, the states were free to make all kinds of laws respecting the establishment of religion and prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So something to think about. And that's why the 14th Amendment is important. But we have a guy on the Supreme Court right now who said openly that he thinks the Establishment Clause here as he puts it, resists incorporation into the 14th Amendment. He wants to go back to having states being able to establish their own religions or to favor one over the other. And there we are again, no law respecting establishment of religion. These are the two big clauses they talk about. There's reason to think that the people who wrote this ran them both together. They saw them really as being the same thing. And this is the 14th Amendment. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Well, what did the people who write this, and who were the people who wrote this? Do you even know? We weren't taught that in school. I wasn't. We all learned about James Madison and the other founders, but what about after the Civil War and Reconstruction, when literally, in an important sense, the nation was refounded at that time? Who were the people that did this, and why did they do it? And look at all the different ways that the southern states found to get around this too. Well, they had due process of laws. They found some darkly colored person standing around. They said, "Oh, you're breaking the law." They would drag him into court, convict him of anything they wanted, put him on a chain gang. And then they would, the government would rent them out to industry. It was a racket. There's a movie, Kit and I saw it some while back, called Worse Than Slavery. I believe that was the title. Talked about this type of thing. And in that case, you weren't even somebody's property. Nobody cared about whether you lived or died, and in fact, many died. They were worked to death. Here's the key clauses in the 14th Amendment, in this portion of the 14th Amendment. Privileges or immunities. And this has not even been applied very much because the courts have basically taken the position that they don't know quite what this means. Due process of law, yes, okay. And then the equal protection of the laws, but as we see, Roe versus Wade was struck down because the extended, or the way in which they were previously applying due process of law, the present Supreme Court, the majority, the Catholic majority, decided, no, that's not right. We're not going to do it that way. And they had to reach back, what, to the 1400s, 1500s, to the days when government was based on the sovereign being able to do whatever it darn well pleased and did not need any permission from the people of any kind. So they're reaching back before the principles on which our government were even dreamed of in order to say that no woman has a right to end her pregnancy if she chooses. Well, here's some other things that happened on November 20th. 1789, New Jersey ratified the Bill of Rights. How appropriate to be talking about the First Amendment today. And by the way, New Jersey ratifying, they were the first state to ratify the Bill of Rights on this date in 1789. In 1820, an 80-ton sperm whale attacked and sank the whaling ship Essex. That ship came out of Nantucket, Massachusetts. It was actually sunk in the Pacific. They had gone all the way around Cape Horn in order to get to what they thought were better whaling grounds, and wound up getting sunk by a sperm whale. This was a sensational story at the time. The escaping crew survived, some of them by engaging in cannibalism, and this was the inspiration for the book Moby Dick. 1945, Nuremberg trials began after World War II, putting the Nazis on trial for war crimes and Holocaust and genocide and so forth. 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis ended. I don't know how many people remember. Many of us were pretty small children. Maybe they weren't even born at that time. In 1979, I don't know how much news it made at the time. I don't remember it being news at the time, but a whole bunch of militants in Saudi Arabia seized the Grand Mosque in Mecca, the holiest Islamic mosque, and held a whole bunch of people hostage. The Saudi army came in and took them quite a while to put everything down. But afterwards, the Saudi regime became much more repressive. Previously, it had been becoming a little bit more liberal and then became much more oppressive, apparently because they realized they had in their midst a lot of radical extremist people, and they didn't want to have that sort of thing happening again. And then, as you see, 1985, Microsoft Windows 1.0 was released on this date. And a couple of birthdays. Joe Biden, look at that. You can calculate how old he is. And also Edwin Hubble, the guy who really nailed down that the universe was expanding. We still call the rate at which it expands the Hubble constant. So as we move on to discussion, remember, as you go through your days, and whether or not you tell people you're a free thinker, that's another whole can of worms there, but you do want to demonstrate your commitment to facts and reason and be the future that you wish to see. That's part of making the world a better place. Elias Facet, which means do better, our motto. With that, we'll move on to some question and answer and discussion, and help me make the longer presentation on the First Amendment more interesting, but trust me, I've got a lot of stuff that I think you will find quite interesting. Thanks again.